Hey everybody, Jess Intuitive Angel Healer here with your Grounded. Thank you so much for joining our podcast today and welcome to another episode of Dancing in the Toxic Shadows, Finding Empowerment and Hope Through the Toxicity. This is a podcast that features an empowered soul's swim through the toxic waters of life and how they have found the courage, strength, and blind faith used to obtain the life that they truly want to live, and how they encourage others to take that first leap of faith, no matter if they can see the first two steps or not. Today we have a very special guest, Anissa Hudak, and she is from Manhattan, Kansas, and she is a yoga therapist, Reiki master, and founder of the Trauma Healing Yoga Therapy program. So welcome to our show today.
Thanks so much for having me on today.
You have an incredible story of a journey of how you took yoga and you transformed your hurt and all your pain and trauma, and you learned how to now you manage it with Reiki and yoga. And you're going to tell us all about your story about how you escaped the toxic shadows and you overcame them with love and yoga. So without further ado, go ahead and tell us all about it.
So my husband was active duty military, and we found out that he was going to be leaving for his second deployment just as soon as he had gotten back from his first deployment. We waited, it was going to be about a year away, so we waited until it was about a month out, and then we told our sons that he would be leaving again for another year. And about 3 days later, all of a sudden, our older son started with this uncontrollable diarrhea. And so, I mean, to the point where he was actually coming home from school with like soiled pants, just absolutely uncontrollable. So we took him to the brigade surgeon. They ran all kinds of tests, and they finally came back and said, there's nothing wrong with him. He has a nervous stomach. He's upset that you're leaving. And in fact, there's nothing I can even give him to make him stop. At that point, he really stopped sleeping as well. So of course, you know, my husband being active duty, he has to go. And so he leaves me with this poor child who's not sleeping well and who's literally just uncontrollable diarrhea. So I started doing some research online, and Reiki kept coming up. And I was like, okay, I think the universe is trying to tell me something. So I found a gal in Kansas City, and I contacted her. And I told her what was happening, and she said, come and, I said, before anybody touches my kid, like, you're going to do this on me first, let me find out. And I figured, I'm going to spend, $50 or whatever, have a great nap, see what it's all about, whatever, So I went, and I was open to it, but I was just like, all right, well, let's just see what this is. Got down on the table, she laid hands on me, and all of a sudden, I felt like there was water rushing down my legs. I felt like my legs were going to actually get up and walk off the table without me.
That's pretty cool.
It was really wild. I went to this place where it was like a dreamlike state. I wasn't quite awake, but I wasn't quite asleep. And it was just incredible. And when I got up, I had this incredible sense of peace. And I said, okay, I need to learn how to do this for my son because he needs this. It was just amazing. She said, okay, well, I'm having a class in about 2 weeks. Come on back and I'll teach you. Okay, that's great. Couldn't wait to get home. Now it's a 2-hour drive for me. Couldn't wait to get home and clean. Now I hate to clean. Absolutely hate to clean. But I couldn't wait to go home and clean. And for the next 6 days, I cleaned like a mad woman. I mean, my hands were red and cracking from the bleach. You could have eaten off my toilet seats. I mean, just to the point where my kids were like, okay, where's mom? Who are you? So she calls me 6 days later to kind of check in. And I said, everything's going great, except for the fact that I'm cleaning like a mad woman. And she said, oh, you're making room in your life for Reiki. It's okay. I
You're
said,
doing
oh,
a spiritual purge. No big deal.
okay, yeah, whatever. So I went. I did levels 1 and 2. It was very intense for me. I didn't realize that I had all of the gifts and abilities that I apparently had. I always kind of knew along the way, but it really kind of blew open Pandora's box for me. And it took me about a year to really get used to the energy level before I could go back and become a master. So really enjoyed it, loved bringing it to Manhattan. I worked with soldiers on post, did kinds of things, absolutely loved it. One of the things that really works for me for grounding is yoga. And I didn't want to go to anybody else's class. I didn't want to be on anybody's schedule. So I decided to take a yoga teacher training course in order to learn how to keep myself safe on the mat. And it was just purely for those reasons. I was not teaching, I wasn't doing anything like that. It was just for me. The universe has a really sick sense of humor, let me tell you. And so I was about halfway through the course and I realized, yoga is this amazing gift. I wouldn't be teaching, I would be sharing it. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll entertain this. Within a month of finishing the class, I had 2 job offers.
Nice.
And I
Yeah,
said,
spirit always does bring you your people. And I always tell people don't stress out when you're a new, practitioner, because you may think you're in control, but us humans are silly because we're not in control of anything. So
very little, very, very little.
very little.
And so I wound up creating a business and starting to teach. And it was a very fitness-based yoga class that I was teaching. And so I decided, well, I really enjoy the people that I was in class with. I really enjoy learning about yoga. And so I'm going to take some more classes so I could teach other, populations. And one of the courses that they offered through the school that I went through is called Warriors. And it was for active duty and veterans. And it was all about PTSD and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, I live in the belly of the beast. I mean, my husband's active duty. We live right outside of Fort Riley, Kansas. We've got people coming and going all the time. It would be a great thing to bring back to my community. And so I decided to take the classes. I'm halfway through the first day and I said, uh-oh. The first person I need to work on is right here.
Uh-huh.
When I was 18, I had been date raped. And I didn't realize that my PTSD had really crawled into the nooks and crannies of my life and was holding me back in ways. And I just kind of accepted that was going to be the lingering effects. And I come to find out, I didn't have to live like that. Kind of began this journey, taking more and more courses within this particular course load. And before I knew it, I wound up being 500 RYT registered yoga trainer and a yoga therapist. And I specifically deal with people who have PTSD and TBIs and other trauma-related issues. So depression, anxiety, hypervigilance, all that kind of stuff.
Whatever is in the dark will always come to the light. So you can run away from it your whole life, but guess what? At some point, you're going to have to face it, because that's how you start healing. Is awareness is the first key. And then after you get awareness, then you got to take the steps to accept it.
Well, people don't like to be uncomfortable, and people are always looking for the silver bullet, the easy way. There is no easy way. There is no silver bullet, and it's going to be uncomfortable. If you do the work, life on the other side is so much better.
It's always better to face your demons instead of run away from them, because they're going to trip you and they're going to catch you at some point. At that point, that's when I finally started saying, hey, I can't run away from this. I thought in my 20s I could, got to my 30s, still hasn't happened. So maybe I should just start accepting this and working through it. And that's what I like about you, is that is one of the biggest systems that needs help, is the mental health system, the whole system in that area, because there's so many soldiers that are coming back with PTSD. It's really affecting their life to the point that they're literally used to be this big guy who could do anything, and now they're just sitting watching cartoons because world's that scary for them.
Yes, indeed. You know, I had the opportunity to actually work on post with the Warrior Transition Battalion here at Fort Riley. And I worked with them for a little over 3 years as a yoga therapist. And I have to tell you, it was the most fun. These big burly guys would come in and they're like, we're going to do a little stretching and then we're going to take a nap. And this is all girl stuff. And, and then they get on the mat with me for an hour. And my class is very different than what they perceive a yoga class to be. And afterwards they come up to me and they're real quiet and they say, oh ma'am, that was really cool. And I really like the way I feel. I'll see you next week.
Yes.
Okay. And then they start coming back week after week after week. And then they start bringing their friends. And they're like, dude, you got to try this. This she's amazing. It's not what you think. And I made so many converts because of it. And I loved it because they didn't even realize what was happening on the mat. I talk the entire hour that we're on the mat. And that's specifically done so they're never alone with their thoughts. So it's like the Anissa stand-up hour. I'm constantly yakking and, we're talking, it's interactive, kind of like our podcast here, it's a conversation.
Sounds like my angel sessions.
We're doing this and I interject, okay, on to the left side, we're going to meet me here and we're going to do this and, feel free to join me here. All while just kind of chatting about, hey, what's everybody doing this weekend and food. And after an hour, they've moved their body, have released some of the emotional baggage and trauma that they're carrying. They don't even realize it. And afterwards, they're like, I feel great. Exactly. You don't have to carry the baggage. You don't have to carry the trauma. And it's stored within the body. And we're able to utilize yoga in such a way that it enables you to release it very quickly and effectively.
I really want to stress to people that haven't done yoga because my mindset was very dense. And that's why I went on this spiritual awakening, because I've always been a smart girl, but I unfortunately had a lot of social training that doesn't make sense. And I didn't understand yoga because it was always made fun of in my world, because nobody does yoga. Nobody's a vegan in my world. And now my world doesn't consist of that. My world consists of I don't eat meat anymore. I work on yoga. But yoga is awesome. Now that I'm a certified chakra practitioner, I'm learning that when you bend certain parts of the body, you're releasing it. And our sacral chakra is where we store all of our old emotions. And right above that, you got your solar plexus is where your power is. So if you're not keeping those two spots healthy, and that's when you get the belly problems. And as a woman, you start getting, I've noticed, I've put the link of women that have really bad endometriosis, stuff like that. I've noticed, or you can't have kids, you have infertility issues. That is because your sacral is so blocked off. I've met so many women who have problems with reproductive and they go through the in vitro. If people would understand, if you could really just start getting that, your body and your chakras and all your, zones in balance, you wouldn't have to spend all this money on all the medicine. And like you said, you took your son for belly problems. He was having diarrhea. I've worked at a GI clinic, and most of the time there's no, IBS is something that you really can't do much for. They give you a medicine, but there's really not too much you can do for IBS. So I think that's why I really want to stress that start learning about yoga, start learning about other ways, and you can do it. And especially for all the military men that are, I don't know if you've ever heard of ayahuasca, but there's people that ayahuasca makes you hallucinate, and it's given to you by a supposed medicine man in the middle of South America.
Yeah.
No thank you, no thank you, no thank you, because you're supposed to be in a tent with 5 other people and all your demons are supposed to come out and you're supposed to hallucinate and talk to them, and this is the purging. But people are so desperate for help that they spend thousands of dollars to go out there because they want to relieve their PTSD. when if more people knew that you could just turn to yoga, simply these holistic methods, you could totally just transform your life and not live in that prison that we put in our mind.
Absolutely. And just to kind of come full circle, I was able to take the Reiki back to my son, and it did help him with his sleep issues, and his diarrhea stopped.
I bet it did.
So that was really amazing for me. That was to see it in action, and to see it working. So that was really amazing. And then, I became a yoga therapist, did this whole journey. And 4 years ago, I was raped again.
Oh, no.
I was able to then say, okay, yes, I'm a practitioner. I know what to do. I'm also a person, and I'm going through this emotional journey here. What can I do? What do I have to do? What would I tell my clients to do? And that's really what I would every day. What would I tell my client to do? Okay, so this is what I need to do for myself. And that's really how I was able to heal. I'm still healing. I'm sure that it's ever a cured kind of a situation. I think it's a lifelong marathon, but I'm certainly better than I was.
Yes.
I don't feel like PTSD is holding me back in any real way. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I had the tools. And once I was really educated on physically what happens within the body with PTSD and how it manifests as mental health issues, it was like, okay, we weren't taught this in biology. We weren't taught this in high school science classes. It's probably not even in college science classes, biology, what have you. This information is not getting out there.
Yes.
And people don't know what's actually happening within their body. They get a diagnosis, oh, you got PTSD. And they start treating the depression, or they treat the anxiety, or their hypervigilance, or whatever it is, but they're not treating the root cause. And when you have that moment, I was like, we gotta tell people about this.
Yes.
People have to know. They should know what's going on in their bodies. Doctors are doing a huge disservice by just handing out a diagnosis and not telling people what it actually is. And maybe it's not up to doctors to tell them, but we have a responsibility to get this information out and into people's hands. So that way, when they understand what's happening, they can say, oh, in this moment, that's right, this is what's happening. This is what I need to do for myself. Things don't have to be as bad for them as it is if they understood the underlying cause.
Exactly. And it doesn't help when you have people around you calling you crazy and telling it's all in your head, because it's kind of like finding a counselor. If you find a good counselor, then you're gonna make progress. But if you don't find a good healthcare team, you need to be your own advocate. And I'm speaking from experience, because I ended up having to go on my own journey, and that's what created my whole business, is because I've sat in my head for years, and I've had people around me just be terrible and make it. I'm surprised I didn't have a mental breakdown, and become on the 6 o'clock news, because people really messed with me that bad to get into my brain and just wouldn't stop. And then this whole spiritual awakening of my marriage being, everything just fell apart. And it was good, though. It was the first freedom I ever had to feel like, hey, I don't have to sit here and be something that I'm not anymore, because I've always been me, but I've always strived to work for other people's goals, and never, like, when it came to me doing something, I've had people tell me how selfish I was, that I wanted to go back to school. How am I selfish? Because I want to go get an education, because I want to become a medical assistant. I was told I was selfish, and that I needed to go get back to reality. And I was like, ooh, okay. I love it, though, that you're honest, that I hate it when people say I'm healed. If you've had a certain amount of trauma to you, don't be embarrassed if you're not healed right away, because I'm not fully healed. And I know that because I take accountability every day, and I've focused now on the parts that aren't healed, and I start working on that and the shadow parts and all that, instead of running away. But it's all about the awareness and taking accountability every day. So I like it that you tell people, hey, you don't have to be healed, because everybody thinks, okay, when I get into treatment, because this is how we're we're taught, you get into treatment, you're supposed to have a certain a time that you're supposed to do this and that. And I don't believe that with healing. If you're not working it on it every day, then yeah, that's different. But if you're working it on it every day, your healing is going to come to you when your soul is ready to heal. It's not going to come to you because I say, hey, you've been working with me for 6 months now and you're not healed. This is ridiculous, but that's the kind of pressure that we put on ourselves, unfortunately. And that's why we have so many unhealed people that are running around. What is your breaking moment that made you say enough is enough in your own personal life and decide to go on this a healing journey? Because like I said, a lot of us know we're unhealed and we're bleeding all over people, but a lot of us don't take that accountability and we want to pretend that nothing's fine. But besides the Reiki, what else kind of stepped in there to say, hey, I'm going to take control of my life, and even though this trauma, I'm better than my trauma. I am the boss.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if it was any one thing. I will tell you that I had this beautiful, beautiful soul, my best friend, Stacy. We were friends for many, many years. She passed away. She had pancreatic cancer. She and I actually first went to yoga classes together.
Aww.
Where we were students. And we had the absolute best time together.
Nice.
And sometimes we would fall over and it was like dominoes. We just loved, and we fell in love with yoga. We really loved the class. The gal who was teaching the course, I remember asking her one day, how did you become a yoga teacher? And she told me the company she went through and whatever. And I said, okay. And I just kind of tucked that in the back of my mind. And I always kind of thought, wouldn't it be kind of fun to learn what she knows? Fast forward, Stacy passes away. I tried to go to some yoga classes here in Manhattan, and I wound up literally leaving the classes crying, running from the classes sometimes. I couldn't be there without her.
I'm sorry, I understand that.
And so that's kind of why I decided, okay, well, I'm going to take this teacher training course. I found the company that gal had gone through. They wound up having a course in my town. They were teaching, the level 1 class, 3 weeks from when I was looking at it. I quickly signed up for it. And of course, universe is always, working behind the scenes, right?
Well, that was your friend working behind the scenes. That was her little gift to you.
So I couldn't go to classes because being there was too painful to be there without her. And I got into this class and I'm learning about it. And that's when I realized that, for me, it was sharing this beautiful gift. It wasn't teaching yoga.
Yes.
And I realized that it allowed me the opportunity to be with her in a very sacred and special way.
That's really neat.
It was kind of a twofer, That's, I guess, a reason why I started teaching. It just kind of happened. And life is this journey and it just kind of snowballs. And, I wound up finding myself on this journey. I'm grateful for it. Once I was raped again, I had this ability, but I had to kind of step back and put myself into my client's shoes and, put on the practitioner hat and say, okay, what would you tell your client to do? Okay, now I'm the client, go do it. And it was interesting to do that. But that being said, I did go to a therapist. I found an amazing therapist. I actually still see him.
Nice.
He's in Kansas City, so I drive 4 hours round trip to see him. He specializes in trauma. I am on medication. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's not. And I'm tired of it being a taboo because I say a lot of these things from experience because I am the girl who went in to finally admit that she has a problem with anxiety, probably because I've been around a lot of awful people and seen a lot of awful things that I probably shouldn't have seen in this lifetime. I love it that we can give people a new way to live and not just give them a pill, because those pills unfortunately lose their effect at some point, and then your body takes in all these toxins that's not healthy for it either. But who or what did you use as a source of motivation to keep you going on your journey? Do you have any personal recommendations for our audience?
First, I'd like to say that, what I have realized along this journey is that meds are great. If you need them, take them. Therapy is great. And generally here in the West, we always prescribe, meds and therapy for PTSD,
Yes.
trauma, depression, anxiety, what have you. That's great, but there's more. That kind of deals with like here up. You have to release it from the body. And in the West, we treat, the brain and the mind as one section, and then the body as the rest of another section. And that kind of gets overlooked. The body stores trauma within the tissues. I mean, truly, your issues are in your tissues. And so you really have to release it. So yes, meds are good. Yes, therapy is good, but there is more. And your healing journey is as individual as your thumbprint. And so you have to find what works for you. For some people, it's not yoga. It might
Exactly.
be martial arts. It could be Tai Chi. There's no right or wrong. It could be running. There's no right or wrong. It's only about what's good for you. That includes therapy. You really need to find somebody who meets your needs. If you have trauma, find a therapist that deals with trauma. I mean, I was lucky enough, I found a man who deals with sexual trauma. Now, I wasn't sure how I would feel about talking to a
Yeah.
man. I had never spoken to a man before. I had only spoken to women. And I was kind of like, how is this going to work? I said, well, you know what? I need to try. Got to try. What's the worst that could happen? I stop going to him. Okay. I find somebody else. But I've found that I've actually done a lot more processing with him than I have with anybody else.
Nice.
I wouldn't have done that had I not taken the chance. But also too, I was at a point in my journey where I could do that. So if you try something and you're like, oh, this doesn't work for me, give it a chance, wait 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, go back and try it again, because you're at a different place. You're a different person and it might affect you differently. So always go back and try things. One of the major things that I suggest is always have a notebook and write down, it's 8 months since the incident or whatever, I tried this, didn't really do much for me. And then go back and look at those notes and try it again, 6, 12, whatever months, because you're a different person, you're at a different place. So that's really important. Also, finding professionals that meet your needs. So this is a really big thing, especially with yoga. I don't want people to think that they can walk into their, local corner yoga shop and release whatever trauma that they've got going on. Those of us who work in that, we prepare ourselves before the class.
Yes.
I'm always prepared for whatever might happen. I also have safety protocols in place, because if somebody has an episode on a mat, I need to be able to keep myself safe, them safe, the rest of the class safe. There's a lot that goes into it. When you walk into a fitness-based yoga class, which are great and totally meet a need, that practitioner doesn't have the education that professionals like I do. They don't know, and they may not even know about your background. And so if you have an experience on the mat, they're not going to know what to do for you. And they might even throw you out of the class because you're creating a disturbance or something. You have to find professionals that meet your needs. That includes your therapist, that includes your doctors prescribing your meds, that includes whoever you're working with to physically release the trauma from your body. And so that's why there's a difference between fitness-based yoga, which is great and yummy and we love it, the therapy aspect.
Yeah.
And when you work with a professional like me, we have a certain level of education. We have a certain background that we can keep everybody safe, and you get the experience that you really deserve. For therapy, there's all kinds. There are yoga therapists for cardiac rehab, cancer, MS, and we all have these specialty backgrounds to help you really achieve the absolute most you can achieve. So please find a professional that meets your needs
Yes.
in all aspects.
Very true. And that's why I'm happy that I've finally overcome all that. Find your people, find your support, and be your own advocate in your health. So always ask a bunch of questions.
Finding my tribe, found my own group of people that, my support system that helped me with my own personal needs. But what I found is that women who are like me, who have been raped, we don't have a community. There's no place for us to really talk. And sometimes we don't want to talk about it. We just want to be with other people who are like us, because it is very, very isolating. It's very lonely. And so what I started looking at were different models. We have vets and active duty, and they have tons of resources now available to them, thank goodness, to help them know that they're not alone. They don't have to suffer alone. They don't have to take the journey alone. Alcoholics, they have their own beautiful process. NA, GA, all of these groups have their own cliques. But I didn't find one for women like me. And so that's what I'm actually creating. It's called Phoenix Women. It is a monthly membership that women can tap into, where they get not only yoga therapy with me, but other holistic things that they can try to help them heal. But also too, it's a community. So we're not alone. We have each other. And sometimes we need a little lifting up. Sometimes we offer that. And offering that is part of our healing as well. Being there for others is also part of the healing process. And so we need that sense of community. Man was not designed to be alone.
Exactly.
And so I'm creating that tribe, because nobody should have to feel alone in this. Nobody should have to suffer alone. No one should have to take the healing journey alone. And it's very hard for people who have not been raped or molested or sexually assaulted to understand what our needs are. Creating that tribe.
I've noticed in my group, I could never get that whole, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. That's the biggest thing. I've had a lot of my friends very dear and close to me that's happened to them, and it ruined their life. And one of them's not here because she just decided to do drugs enough that her heart finally couldn't take it, and she died on the operating table of fixing her heart valves. More and more, that's my biggest thing, is to let women know, to give you a voice. And that's why I have this toxic shadows, because I feel like we're in a shadow. My whole life I've felt like I've been in the shadows, saying, yes, I'm Molly housewife, and I'm perfect, and I had the kid, I went to school, I worked at the specialty doctor's office and had the smile on my face. And little did all those people know all the crazy things that I held on my back every day. And that's why most of the people, look at your doctors when you go in there, look at people's eyes. You can see that smile is nothing, because I can see when the pain that half of America is holding back, because we've been told, mostly either they don't want to hear about it, or they try to tell you, don't talk about it, it's not the time. And when is the time for your mental health? When are we going to start taking time for our mental health and start dealing with our problems, instead of going to work for 50 hours? And all those people, like, we're having Corona now, all these people that have been trained to work 80 hours a week are going out of their minds right now because they don't have anything to do, because that's what all they've known to do. So it's a whole mindset and changing. That's what going on this journey does. What does your journey look like now that you've taken back your power from the toxic shadows and its inhabitants?
Enlightened, empowered, educated. I feel better prepared. When something does crop up that I'm not really sure of, I know that I have people around me that I can tap into and say, hey, have you ever experienced this? What are your thoughts on this? So I'm very lucky. And I've invested a lot of time, heartache, bandwidth, money, and I have this amazing education. and it needs to be shared.
Well, people are listening right now, so I like it that you detail what yoga is, because everybody thinks it's the hot yoga. That's what everybody thinks. For all of you women out there, this is an interesting, since we're on the topic, it's actually kind of ties in, because he came in the 90s and he said, I have this yoga, which he didn't tell anyone. By the way, I stole this from my guy in India and brought this here, but y'all don't know about it. So he came here, set up his Bikram yoga studios. Meanwhile, he was secretly just doing, making these women do all these things and sexually abusing them. Back then, if you didn't get his approval, and it's like that in a lot of places, hey, guess what? You don't get a yoga studio. And that's somebody's dream. And women come to that choice of, do I let this? And then that's where the sexual predators come in. But I love it that they finally broke this guy out and they made him to know, hey, that is not cool. These people came here to get you as a mentor. I like it that they finally, these women had their whole dream that it was going to go away, and they finally came out and said, hey, I can't hold this any longer. And they made it noted for everyone out there that, hey, if this is happening to you, because a lot of people don't understand, stuff goes on behind the scenes that nobody ever talks to you about. We got it with Bill Cosby. We got it with all these people from the 60s and 70s and that are starting to come out now. Narcissists are really good about making you keep a secret, because I understand that. And that's where a lot of this, it's almost like the fear that a narcissist would give you. That's why women and men even, that's why humans tend to hold these secrets and not tell, because it's the whole control. It's, I'm in power of your life, and if you say this, then nobody is going to ever look at you the same. And they use that fear. That's what I hate, is aggressors use that fear. They play upon it to get their way, to be in control. And women are, and people are just starting to come out, and I love it that people are starting to talk about it now, because that's why all this is, bad things have been happening for so many years, because these horrible monsters have scared people so much that they didn't want to talk about it. But now women are, not just women, people, because it's not just a woman thing. People are coming out and saying, I've had enough of it. And it's kind of like, I got to the point where I was like, I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to let my truth be known. So that's part of the healing journey too.
First let me say that when you've been raped or sexually assaulted, molested, incest, what have you, it's never about the sex.
No, it's about control.
It's about control.
Mm-hmm.
It's about power. It's about taking your power. And what I have found in my process is that when I became educated as to what was actually happening within my body, and I was able to, if I was in a moment and I was able to take a step back and take a breath and say, okay, look what's happening here. Look what my body's doing. Look at how I'm reacting to this situation. And when I was able to take that step back and take a breath and look at it, I had a choice. I didn't have to react that way. I could respond differently. And in that moment, I got my power back, because that incident, that person no longer had that control over me. I could decide how I was going to respond and not react. And that's when the power came back. That's when I became empowered to, okay, I can do this. But it really starts with education. You need to understand what's happening within your body. You need to understand why you're reacting in such a way, because it's your body doing it. It has very little to do with the person or the incident. We kind of put that there, but it really doesn't. It's really about what's happening within your body. And once you get the control over that and you understand it, you get your control back. You take it back from that person who took it from you. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience when you're able to take that step back, breathe, look at the situation and say, okay, I don't have to do this. I can do this or this or this, but I don't have to do that. Amazing.
That is powerful, powerful guidance to survivors out there, because like I said, I'm not a survivor of sexual trauma, but I am a survivor of all the other traumas out there, and that is very amazing guidance.
What I'd have to say is that we as women have really been on an incredible journey. You know, it actually started with World War II, because all of our men were off fighting wars. What did we do? We left our homes and we went into the factories and started working. And all of a sudden we became independent. You know, our guys were gone, and so we were running our households and having money and doing things, working, having jobs. And then when our guys came back, they wanted everything to go back the way it was. And so we became Susie Homemaker again. And some of us stopped working and went back to the homes. But then in the 60s, we then started again leaving the homes, working. But what did we find? We found that we had this glass ceiling and men kept us only at this level. Again, we started, you know, it just started to snowball. And in the 70s, we made a little bit more of a headway. You know, we had Roe versus Wade. We were able to, you know, get abortions finally and make some decisions about our own bodies. We weren't even allowed to make decisions about our own bodies. And then, you know, again, in the 80s, we started a lot more of us going back to work and really becoming educated. Wait, some women weren't allowed to go to certain colleges until the late 70s and 80s. We weren't allowed to go to certain colleges. And so now we're becoming even more educated, or as educated as our men contemporaries. And so now, and here we are, now we're in the 90s. We're into politics, we're doing other things. We have been snowballing. But here we are, we're, you know, 2000 and 2010s, 2020s, here we are. And, you know, we've got the Harvey Weinsteins that are holding us back. We have to provide sex in order to proceed in our jobs. Now, that has kind of always been the case all along the way, but women are now saying, no, I don't have to blow you to get a promotion.
Have you ever seen the movie with Dolly Parton, 9 to 5? My
Yes.
favorite movie. If you've never seen, it's an 80s movie. Y'all need to go see best, because Dolly Parton is my favorite, because I love it that she went and got plastic surgery, went and got the biggest boobs ever. She didn't get them so she could get a man, because she's had the same man for like 60 years. She got him because she wanted to be pretty, and she liked the way she looked with all her makeup. She came up in a time, the 50s were not the time for her to come out. Look, you couldn't even show your belly button at that time. And she came out with some stuff, and I was like, good for you, Dolly, because of her. And she's 70 now, and she's still working as hard as she can on helping the new women that come out, the new young girls, as being their role model for, hey, you can be cute as you want, you can have the biggest boobs you want, and you know what, you don't have to be a sex object. You can just be you, and screw it if everyone wants to call you a harlot, because you are what you are, and your clothes and your makeup shouldn't define you. And when I put my makeup on, I used to, my ex was very big on telling me, oh, who are you getting ready for now? And I'm like, myself. And I used to say that all the time, because I have never put on my clothes. Maybe I wanted to look, you know, just be like, hey, how you doing? But I've never really gotten dressed for the person that I'm with. It's always like, how do I feel? How do I like? Because I don't really care. I put on what I put on to make me feel good. And if we could get over that whole thing of every woman has to be a sex object, that would be fantastic. But maybe 20 more years.
Well, we
Hopefully.
can only hope. But, you know, I know a lot of women feel like, well, if I hadn't worn that skirt, if I hadn't worn that shirt, maybe I wouldn't have been raped.
That's ridiculous, because a monster is a monster is a monster. So what guidance would you give fellow beautiful souls that are out there doing a similar toxic dance, that are tired of it and would like to have a different dance partner?
Number one, get yourself a notebook. You need to start taking notes. If you have nightmares, if you have dreams, write them down. If you've tried different things holistically, write them down. you need to keep track because you are your own best advocate. So, having a notebook with all your notes in it is going to be really helpful. It's also going to help remind you, yeah, I did try aromatherapy and that didn't work for me, but let me go back and try it again, whatever it is. So get yourself a notebook. 2, I would say, find professionals that meet your needs. Get yourself a team, whether that be, somebody who's prescribing you the correct kind of meds. Maybe you need a therapist. Maybe you need a massage therapist. Whoever these people are, create your support team. And don't be afraid to interview people. Like, just because you hear somebody, and don't think that they're going to be the end all. You have the right to interview people, try them out, try somebody else. You don't have to just go with this one person. So formulate your team so they meet your needs. Surround yourself with other people like you. Community is such a healing presence. And make it a positive healing experience. You don't want negative Nancys. You don't want the Debbie Downers. You're not looking for another toxic environment to get yourself into. What I'm finding, especially like with Facebook groups, there are groups for women who've been sexually assaulted and what have you. And they talk about their abuser. They talk about ad nauseum. They're beating it to death. It's like, okay, at what point are you going to get beyond rehashing it and start working on yourself? So find yourself a really positive healing group that you can be a part of. Just start taking care of yourself. You are in the number one relationship you will ever have in your lifetime is with yourself. You need to be in love with yourself. You need to take care of yourself. And not only is that, maybe getting your nails done and putting your makeup on, maybe that's going for a hike and just being alone with yourself. And that's okay. You're allowed to. You don't have to always be with someone. You can be alone. You're in a relationship with yourself. You're never really alone. And so that would probably be, my top 4 things.
Well, you are an amazing guest, and I'm so happy to have you here and for you to share your journey with our guests here, because it's not about that it can't be healed. It's that we just need more women like yourself to come out here and you're giving people permission to come out and talk about it, because that's what people need more of, is permission to know that it's okay, and also to know that it's not a shame. Whatever you have lived in your life was supposed to happen, good or bad, and if it was bad and it wasn't your doing, I've learned that it's somebody else's karma that was in your life that helped produce that bad. So it's almost sometimes where I feel the best reasoning I can give is that it's we're sometimes a victim of our circumstances, of our environment, but the universe works in mysterious ways. And I know that sometimes you're just like, well, I've had clients give me some stories and I can't even reason why that happened to them. But then I've talked to spirit, because that was my biggest thing, is I believe everything happens for a reason, but I don't believe that we create this kind of stuff to happen to us. And I figured out that it's somebody else's karma, that they ran away from their demons. So unfortunately, you can put this on, to wrap this up too, is that sometimes we are a victim of circumstance, and sometimes other people's actions create their own karma. And so, for example, if you had a mom who never dealt with her trauma as a kid, and she ran from it and just ran into a bunch of toxic relationships, because that's usually what happens, is that abandonment turns into you just stay with crappy guys the whole time, and then you never worked on it. Unfortunately, that's what I'm noticing. What I've noticed is the link key is that a parent who didn't have that, or some kind of trauma they didn't have unhealed, created a monster in their world. And unfortunately, that monster, for like the kids say that, why did my parent abuse me the whole time, for that kind of example. So don't always take all the guilt and the blame for everything that happens in your life, and know that sometimes we get these tests to spiritually grow. And I find that light workers go through these horrendous experiences to help others heal and let them, and it's like a whole, it's kind of like a game of dominoes sometime. But thank you so much for what you do. Your services are truly needed out there for survivors. How can our guests reach you if they resonate with your services?
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed being able to chat with you this morning. So if folks are interested in working with me, you can either find me at www.traumahealingyoga.com. I'm on all the social media platforms, traumahealingyoga.com. Kind of like a bad penny, I just keep showing up. And hopefully by the time this podcast is released, my cell phone app will be up and running. And so you can find that on iTunes or Google Play or Androids. That is, again, Trauma Healing Yoga. Nice. So you can find me there.
Awesome. Well, I definitely hope people that need to reach out will, and all the links will be at the bottom of this as well. So thank you so much for being here today. I truly appreciate it. And well, there you have it, beautiful souls. Another powerful guest that has learned to survive their swim in the toxic waters and break up with their toxic dance partner, fear. If you need help trying to find a new dance partner, please reach out to myself or Anissa on the show today, and let us show you how a single 4-letter word can change your mindset. And that 4-letter word is love. With love, all things are possible. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dancing in the Toxic Shadows. Until we meet again, this is Jess Intuitive Angel Healer, sending healing angel vibes. Love and light, everybody. Take care.